Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me in this video. This one is a very sensitive topic, a very politically incorrect topic. I hope that anyone who's tuning into this video will stick around for the duration of the video. There's going to be a lot of things said in this video that some people will take offense to. There's going to be a lot of things in this video that people are sensitive to. Yeah, this is the beginning of a discussion that should be had. So let's get to it. It is okay to talk about race. It is okay to talk about racism. It is not okay to be a racist, and it is not okay to belittle other individuals because of their race, because of their ethnic background or whatever. So you have a lot of Caucasian people who are afraid of talking about racism, at least with people of other races and ethnicities. Amongst themselves, a lot of them are cool with talking about some of that stuff, but there are white folk who are afraid to talk about racism or race, race related topics with people of color. And when I say people of color, I'm not just referring to African Americans. It's okay to have these talks. There are, I understand the fear that you may slip up, come out of mouth and say something incorrect. And yeah, chances are you're going to, because you don't talk about these things and you don't know, in a lot of cases, you don't know what you're talking about. And when you don't have these conversations, you don't become educated to know what you're talking about. And yeah, in a lot of cases you aren't qualified to talk on certain matters, but how can you become qualified unless you become educated? How can you become educated unless we have open discussion and talk about these things? So it is okay to talk about race and racism and race related topics. you know but there are some things that I'm gonna go down a list of things and examples in this video to sort of better educate people, even about themselves. There are some things that I'm going to express in this video that even a lot of black people aren't going to like, or a lot of Latinos aren't going to like, or a lot of Asians aren't going to like, but these are topics that I feel is necessary to bring up. I feel it's important to be able to talk about race, racism, race-related matters, class, related matters, so on and so forth, because it is relevant to politics, to our economy, to how the system is developed, and in being better educated, we can avoid things in the future, you know, or we can make things, or we can make things better for the future. Now, one of the things that I've noticed, and there are black people who would be upset with me about what I'm about to say. I don't care. One of the things that I have noticed is that race relations has improved. There are still a lot of bigots out there, and and people with certain kind of mindsets and so on and so forth. Some of the stuff that I'm a cover, in this video or whatever. There's a lot of people like that out there, but race relations has improved. It wasn't even 100 years yet, I think, when it was illegal, to actually be in an interracial relationship, and now we have, interracial couples left and right, I remember, I want to say late 80s, early 90s, at least where, I was living at the time, it was kind of frowned upon, you know, or, a type of taboo, I guess, for there to be interracial couples. I know a lot of black women felt that, white women were taking away their good men, you know, and that's a topic that I will probably have to cover in a non-political way, probably on a different YouTube channel or something like that. But a lot of women were feeling that white women were taking their good men, and there are still women out there who feel that way. And then you had I can't really say, I'm not saying that it never happened or anything like that, but I can't say that I've ever really heard of black men complaining about white men being with black women. I'm pretty sure, somebody out there has said that, but I've never heard of it. But yeah, and then especially in the military, in the military, there's a lot of, interracial couples. I've seen, Asians and whites, whites and blacks, blacks and Latinos, whites and Latinos, I mean, it's just, a really beautiful blend of people, in the military that I've seen, and, don't get me wrong, I love our black women. I love women in general. I'm a heterosexual man, you know what I'm saying? So, I love women in general. But, there's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with interracial, relationships or anything like that. You fall in love with whoever you fall in love with. With that being said, even though racial relations have improved, racism is a big thing, and and it has been a big thing, but it's more, it's showing its face a lot more recently. So I'm gonna go into a couple of different reasons why, and things that are related to racism. All right, so one of the things that I've noticed with people is that there are individuals who don't believe that they're racist, and there are different levels of racism, but there are people who don't believe that they're racist, and in some cases, because of varying definitions and stuff like that, to some degree I believe them, but at the same time, you have people who don't know that they're racist, and then you just have people who aren't necessarily racist, but they are very prejudiced, or classist, I guess, if that's the proper word or whatever. So let me try to define some of these terms. So I had to look this stuff up. I already knew the definition, but to be able to present it, in this video, I wanted to find something more solid. All right, so according to this, and yeah, my sources right now are Wikipedia. According to Wikipedia, white nationalism is a type of nationalism or pan-nationalism which espouses the belief that white people are a race and seeks to develop and maintain a white national identity. Its proponents identify with and are attached to the concept of a white nation. White nationalists say they seek to ensure the survival of the white race and the culture of historically white states. They hold that white people should maintain the majority in majority white countries, maintain their political and economic dominance, and that their cultures should be foremost. Many white nationalists believe that, I can't pronounce that word, multiculturalism, immigration, and non-whites and low birth rates among whites are threatening the white race, and some believe these things are being promoted as part of an attempted white genocide. All right, so that white genocide part is ridiculous. There's nobody out to kill. Well, there are people who have it in their hearts and who feel a certain way towards white people because of how they've been treated and how their ancestors have been treated, or how their so-called race in general has been treated as a whole. There is no solid movement or effort to, what they call it, a white genocide, to perform a white genocide. There's nobody out, just going around killing a bunch of white people or anything like that. Now, examples of this white nationalism can be seen in politics today. It has been seen for quite a long time. I'm going to identify quite a few of them. All right, so when President Obama took office, or when he was president-elect, not even when he took office, when he was president-elect, and you can go back and watch the YouTube videos and bring up all of the different newscasts coverage over it. But when he was president-elect, he already started receiving opposition. He already started receiving criticism. When he first stepped into office, if you remember anything about that era, when he was in office, he was blamed for everything. There were decisions that Congress made that he was blamed for. There were things that were done during the Bush administration that he was blamed for, and even amongst, matter of fact, hold on. So there are people who are blaming President Obama now, which I think I said this in another video. There are people who are blaming President Obama now because, or blaming him of the racism that's going on in this country. And some will bring up the Trayvon Martin situation where, he said Trayvon could be his son. There were people demonstrating racism before that, before he said that. There were people who were, referring to his family, calling his wife a monkey. There are memes all over the internet, about his wife, about his children, about him, about killing him, about hanging dolls, that look like him, burning them, so on and so forth. That racism was already there, and it was many of the white nationalists who were behind that. They were upset that a black man was in power. Okay, there are many white nationalists now, which I have to agree with the last part of that. It said many white nationalists believe, multiculturalism, immigration of non-whites, and low birth rates among whites are threatening the white race. Having spoken with a lot of people and having been in debates with a lot of racist and prejudiced people, that has come up time and time again, and then when you see this issue with illegal immigration right now, so you have a lot of Latinos whom, like right now, supposedly ICE is doing like all these, Immigration Customs Enforcement is doing all these different raids across the nation, swooping up a bunch of immigrants, primarily Latinos, and sending them back, or whatever they're doing. I don't know if they're imprisoning them or if they're sending them back or whatever. You got this crisis down at the border, which the only crisis that I see is the, those camps that they got down there, the mistreatment of the children, so on and so forth. And, a lot of that is backed behind the that white nationalism mindset as well. Is that there are too many Latinos coming into this country, and I think it's by the year 2044 or something like that, that whites are supposed to become a minority or something. I don't know, So a lot of this movement and build the wall and all of this crazy stuff is backed by white nationalists. Because they'll say, it's okay if you come into the country, but come in the legal way, and the legal way is to come through seeking asylum. But when these people are coming in and trying to seek asylum, there's a lot of things in place to prevent them from coming in the legal way, And then, for many of those who have come here the legal way, and many of those who are trying to come here the legal way, you have, certain individuals who are being very prejudiced towards these people, and misjudging them, just saying all kinds of stuff. So that's what white nationalism is. And before I continue, which I know maybe I should just go in and out with this, there's this belief that black people can't be racist. That is incorrect. I've known, racist black individuals. I've known them. What was it? There were some guys back up north. I'm not going to say where, but they are basically the flip side of the Ku Klux Klan. They spew the same hatred. The only difference is, they're saying Black Power, and instead of calling, as black people are called niggers or whatever, you got them calling them crackers and what was the other term? Crackers, rednecks, whatever, So a lot of terms are being thrown around. And then even in my youth, I've heard black people some black people, not, everybody, refer to, Asians as spics, chinks, stuff like that. These were things that I've heard a lot in my youth, and during that time frame, I grew up around a lot of, black people. So, and I mean, racial terms get thrown around a lot. There are those self-identifying racial terms. You got a lot of people calling other blacks and even Latinos, saying it and being called it, being called niggas, and stuff like that. And it's like, I've seen white people refer to themselves as rednecks, as, crackers or whatever. I don't get all of that self-identifying mess or whatever. Personally, I don't like to be called a nigger or a nigga. It just don't flow with me. I ain't cool with calling, oh yeah, and I don't know if I said, but yeah, I've heard racial terms towards Latinos as well. And yeah, wetbacks, they say that towards Mexicans and stuff like that or whatever. And I mean, that's even amongst Latinos, which I'm gonna get into, because there's a buddy of mine who questioned me about Latinos being against Latinos coming here. So I'm kind of going to address that, in this video. Hopefully I don't run out of time. All right, so you got white nationalists. Then you have white supremacists. So white supremacists or white supremacism is the racist belief that white people are superior to people of other races and therefore should be dominant over them. White supremacy has roots in scientific racism and often relies on pseudoscientific arguments. Like most similar movements such as neo-Nazism, white supremacists typically oppose members of other races as well as Jews. All right, so here's not all white people are racist, not all black people are racist, not all, you have white nationalists, you have white supremacists. There's pretty much an intertwined group. And, then you have racists. So I probably should have covered the blacks being racist under the racist part. All right, so with white supremacy, I pretty much explained that, being dominated, the way the system is currently set up is somewhat of a white supremacy system, and where, the laws benefit more. This is a classism thing, but it's a racism thing too. The laws benefit more of the wealthier white people. There are poorer white people who are down in the slums with with some of us lower income people, in the hoods and stuff like that. And there are the middle class individuals, But the system would have a lot of those middle class individuals and a lot of those lower class individuals to believe that because of the color of their skin, they're better, than people with different skin colors and ethnicities. And, that kind of is stupid when you look at it and you're like, yo, we're in the same situation. You live, let's say, for instance, over in Kensington and Philadelphia, you live on one side of the tracks. I live on this side. We're divided by, let's say, the L train, right? But we're in the same crappy city. We're under the same crappy conditions. I might get pulled over and stopped by the cops a little bit more than you do. But, the way that the system that we're both living under isn't benefiting either one of us, really. You know what I mean? So the way that the government is set up now is that white supremacist system. The majority of enforcement in this country is dominated by, a system of powerful white people, so to speak. And again, I'm pointing out that white people, I'm not saying that white people are the enemy. The lack of knowledge is the enemy of a lot of, ignorant white people, and is also the enemy of a lot of ignorant colored people as well. Hopefully I can cover that in this film. If not, I'm gonna have to make a couple, part 2, part 3, or whatever. All right, so then we got actual racism. So what is racism? So racism, let me give you the definition. Which, before I even get started on that, I want to say that there are different levels of racism. I don't know if I'm going to be able to break them down in this video, but I will try. All right, so racism is the belief in the superiority of one race over another. It may also include prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone because they are of a different race or ethnicity, or the belief that members of different races or ethnicities should be treated differently. All right, so just in that definition alone, it kind of explains our system. So anybody who and again, it will come back on classism, which I will discuss later on. But anybody who lives in a lot of these urban neighborhoods, and in some cases even some of these poor rural neighborhoods, you will see that the system is designed differently for you than it is for other people. I've said this a couple times with some of the guys that I know. I'm way more likely to get stopped walking down the street than you are. And I've offered to do an experiment with them, to take them somewhere, just drive around, where they can't be seen in the car, but I clearly can be seen in the car. And I was like, I guarantee you, without committing any traffic offenses, that I will be stopped. I know certain areas that, if I'm driving around, I'm going to be stopped. And they've yet to take me up on that offer, but whatever, so, but I'm human, you're human, everybody else out here is human. For the most part, we all want better. Anybody in their right mind, and who has any kind of decent heart, we all want better for our children. We all want, the best, in life, to be able to live the best possible life, So how your group of people is more superior than, my group of people, or my group of people is more superior than their group of people, is a bunch of bullcrap. Excuse me. At the end of the day, you have whites who mistreat whites. Them uppity, way up there, top 1% people you give a crap about, the people that's down, way down here, with the rest of us. They can give a crap about you. So you could be white way down here, and those white people up there, they'll do you dirty in a heartbeat. Same thing, similar concept. You could be black down here, and the people who are down here, try to pull you lower. Or if you're trying to come up in the world, will sit here and try to pull you lower. That crab in a barrel mentality. And then you have, but there are other forms of racism as well. But I guess I better go down the list. you can be racist within your own people, and you can hate your own race, and that's what I'm gonna get into now, next, after this anyway. All right, so there's prejudice. Now you have people who are prejudiced. They're borderline racist, but they're not racist, And there's a buddy of mine who's prejudiced like a mug. It's almost painful to hear this stuff come out of his mouth, you know. And he didn't even know, when I called him prejudiced, he took it as if I was calling him a racist. And other people who, have witnessed, his mindset and so forth, including other white people, have called him racist. To date, I've yet to call him a racist, but he is prejudiced like a mug. Now, what is prejudice? It's the preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. Okay, so if you ask him, let's say, well, I'm not going to go into him, but there are individuals like, for instance, cops. You have a lot of cops who are individuals who grew up in one community without exposure to people of another community, but because what's portrayed on television, music, whatever, they're, the way that they're perceiving people, when they become police officers and go and police in those communities, they treat people in the image that they have versus knowing what kind of people are actually there. So they'll approach, a black person, let's say myself, I'm walking down the street, and this has happened, so I can use this, walking down the street or whatever, and then the cop rolls up on you and is, starting to say, oh, you a thug, you this and that, whatever, oh, get your hands up, if you reach for a gun, I'm gonna blow your head off, that kind of dumb stuff, and they slam you on the car and then start filling on your pockets and, filling on you and checking you and everything with no probable cause whatsoever or reasonable suspicion to pull you over, other than the fact that, you're a black person. And the same thing, even in getting pulled over, you're sitting there, and I know there's a lot of people out here who know what I'm talking about, where you can set your cruise mode, drive, you following the speed limit, you're in the, matter of fact, you may be 1 or 2 miles under the speed limit, you're in a slow lane, you got your cruise mode set, and again, another experience of mine, a cop who just so happens to be sitting there sees you, and then they just start following you for a whole bunch of miles before lighting you up, and then saying, hey, coming up with some kind of bogus reason for pulling you over. It happens. Those are, even with black people, there's a lot of us who grew up in either country, rural areas, or in urban areas, and we know what we've learned from, let's say, our grandmother, our grandparents or our great grandparents, if we were, blessed enough to see them, to live and see them, and the intel that we get without even really experiencing it is, that, oh, white people are racist, this is what happened, and then you see things, and you learn things, about our history and stuff, and learn that, oh, wow, we were treated this bad, things, happen like this. Combine that with going outside, and then being treated a certain way by, let's say, white police officers or whatever, and, it only takes 1 or 2, bad incidences, bad situations to occur to permanently, kind of stabilize, that mindset or whatever, when it's not, entirely true. And you have a lot of black people who are cautious around white people, because of the possibility that, they may be treated a certain way or, may experience racism or whatever, So there's a lot of preconceived, thoughts out there. I've spoken to I've spoken to people who, once they got to know people of color, was like, wow, like, I didn't know that y'all was mad cool like this, not necessarily saying that they were saying mad, but, it'd be like, I didn't know y'all was cool like this. I always thought that, y'all was all gangsters and this, and that. And then when they get to know you, they become your best friends, so it's kind of, interesting how that works out when you aren't, just judging people and you actually get to know people for who they are.